When I had my first company, my first agency, I was building personal brand alongside it. I had to shut that one down and start a new one. Same thing happened with the second agency. Shut it down. The third business, I was able to scale to multiple seven figures within like 6 months because I had the personal brand. It even helped me start my fourth business now, and we're already at a 7-figure run rate with that within 60 days.
Welcome back to episode 6 of 10 Questions with Millionaires. I'm Josh. I'm here with Robert Miller. Robert Miller is an entrepreneur, investor, and multimillionaire. Robert, it's so good to meet with you today. If you wouldn't mind, could you just give us a quick intro on your background and what you do today?
Yeah, sure thing. Been in the digital marketing space, been in the e-commerce space, and been in the crypto space essentially since I was 17, 18. Got into crypto when I was in high school. So 2015, 2016, caught it there and have rode that wave for the past 5-6 years, but then also done a lot of marketing for big name brands as well as for entrepreneurs and other businesses.
What did you do after high school, and do you think college is necessary to be successful today?
So I went into college, actually out of high school, was really just studying business administration, economics, and I was very just entrepreneur driven. So the school system for me didn't necessarily fit even what my identified career path was going to be. I didn't find out what I was going to do until I took a course outside of college, which was digital marketing, Ty Lopez's first marketing course. Because I had made some money in crypto prior to that, but it's not cash flow, it's just, capital gains. So when that happened, I then realized, all right, I need to figure out how to build cash flow, how to build a real business. And so I don't think that it's necessary if you're going to go into the entrepreneurship field to do that. I think it's necessary for things that need pedigree, doctors, lawyers, etc. I think everyone kind of has that same opinion, but for business, you don't necessarily need it. You just need to solve problems.
What advice would you give to people who are looking to scale their business?
You have to learn how to master marketing and bring more revenue in. It's not just a paid ad. It's typically mainly the content, the actual traffic strategy. So Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, like actually getting people to actually care about what you say, what you do. And then from there, I think it's then sales. If you're bad at sales, have a bunch of leads, you're going to get something. And then if you're great at sales and then great at marketing, you can grow really quick. So I would say get good at sales. And then the third one is a little bit unconventional, which would be finance. Understanding how your cash flows work.
What would you say is the top 3 books that you'd recommend everyone should read?
For scaling out their business, I would say The Road Less Stupid gives you the mental frameworks of what to think about, how to think about, and what to think about thinking about. So it helps you kind of think ahead about rolling out a new product, a new offer. It gives you the mental frameworks, at least for me it did, to just look through business at a different way instead of it just being the expert, the subject matter expert, the marketer, or the tactical person. It's actually like the strategy behind it and how you're gonna hold people accountable to it. Second book that I would read if you're building a team, it's called Multipliers, essentially how to work with other people, how to multiply their efforts and their goals, align their interests. Third book that I read that I think is, again, really important for businesses called Predictable Revenue, the $100 Million Best Practices of Salesforce by Aaron Ross. That one goes over different types of sales, different types of marketing, but how to grow and scale out a sales team. And that's really just to bring revenue in the door. It's not necessarily to fulfill on product or anything like that.
What do you feel like is the importance of building your personal brand as a business owner?
It's extremely important because that's all you have. Your mechanism of what you do for people is always going to change because the market changes. Businesses don't typically last forever unless they're financial services businesses that then become institutions and get passed down. And so I think if you're in a business like marketing, like e-commerce or anything like that, your mechanism, your offer, the way that you get more sales is always going to change. Your personal brand's not going anywhere. When I had my first company, my first agency, I was building personal brand alongside it. I had to shut that one down and start a new one. Same thing happened with the second agency because we had too many partners. It wasn't the right fit. Shut it down. The third business, I was able to scale to multiple 7 figures within like 6 months because I had the personal brand. I've been building reputation and will in the marketplace for a while around digital marketing and acquisition of clients and stuff. It even helped me start my fourth business now, and we're already at a 7-figure run rate with that within 60 days.
You've built multiple companies. Not every single one has worked out. What would you say to people on how they should approach failure?
You only need about 2 to 3 people max in a partnership or in a company. You don't need 4 to 5. I learned that lesson. But I remember the loyalty, obviously, that was built between the partners that I had and everything was still strong. I couldn't have done it by myself. A lot of people get caught up in I came up with this, so this part is so valuable to the company. Name doesn't mean anything, or the offer doesn't mean anything unless it's executed on. And so having great executional partners, my side executing, their side executing, that's been really the biggest thing when it comes to failure is if you can set aside your ego, your pride, and the identity of what you found in that prior venture, then you can actually start to see things for what they really are rather than your own perception of what they are based off of your relative experience. That comes from investing into typically events and masterminds to get that exposure, but I think it's having a great team behind you, man. I can't do it all by myself, and it also comes down to just that loyalty and what you build.
And what qualities should people look for in a business partner?
I've had many partnerships. The first one, actually, we were both just starting out in the space, completely brand new, didn't know anything about anything, you know. Second one just brought to the table what I was lacking, which was essentially a lot of optimism, because I had literally gone through the ringer with previous partnerships. I had also learned how to fail in some campaigns and stuff like that, and so I was kind of depleted, and I just had a very realistic, almost sometimes even a pessimistic view, and so I had an optimist partner, and things balanced out and worked out. And the next group was a lot of, you know, executors and people that had their own visions for where they wanted to go, and a lot of entrepreneurs, which could be good but also could be bad. And I realized going through all of those, you need to have partners that are essentially crucial to the business but that won't hold it captive. So you got to bring something to the table, whether that's, you know, connections, people, capital, execution, network, something that is actually crucial to the business function, not just because I like you. But then also being with someone that you actually have the same values and align with. And I know that sounds really corny, but in those times of struggle, or in those times when there is a hiccup in the business, if you're not aligned on core values and the function of like, hey, here's what we believe and here's where we want to go, it'll fall apart. The core function is, where are we going? What are you bringing to the table? What am I bringing to the table? Let's execute, come back, have a real conversation. If you're slacking off, if I'm slacking off, call you out on your shit, call me out on my shit. Let's grow. We have a common vision and purpose. And the whole point is to, you know, not just to make more money, just to have more money. Like the other day, I was able to give my mom $1,000 because she needed it, and that was just because I was able to give it to her. And so I shared that with my partner. He's like, dude, that's freaking awesome. Set aside business for a sec. Like, that's what it's all about.
So what are your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
Crypto's big, man. I got into it pretty early, and it's evolved over the past like 5-6 years, but it's definitely big, and it's a lot bigger than people think. It's not just a new tech, it's actually a new way to even think about money. And it's not just the Bitcoin conversation or the Ethereum conversation. It's a lot to do with the central banks, essentially how they're gonna monitor us with CBDCs. Ultimately, where should we even store wealth? What do we as society see as valuable? Do we see something as value as simply just something that, you know, is rare, or do we actually have to have a cost associated with it? So the Bitcoin example is, you know, you have to have a mining facility in order to verify transaction. It has actual physical cost, physical electricity presence in order to actually verify the transaction with those machines. So as a society, if we view energy backing that specific currency or that specific valuable item, like a gold bar or whatever, has to be mined. There's actual energy costs getting that gold bar. Same thing for crypto. If we value energy going into something that has scarce value, do we then transact with that, or do we just hold that and preserve it? And does it actually change the way that we operate with our society? Who knows? We'll find out. It's actually changing a lot of things now, but I think we'll see what 3.0 looks like and ultimately what the CBDC rollout looks like.
What got you into it?
I got started in about 2015, 2016. My brother and I, we were back in my hometown, Simi Valley, and there was a guy who was really into the dark web stuff. And he wasn't like buying anything illegal or anything. He was just like really into this whole concept. And he was really early on in RuneScape. So he had like 1,500 Bitcoins the first time that we were talking to him. And he kind of just shared more and more information about it. And then he had about 15,000 Bitcoins. And then over a course of another year or two, he had amassed in that wallet address, like the transactions that had gone through it, about 150,000 Bitcoins that had gone through that address. Wow. Then when we saw Bitcoin hit 1,000, we're like, oh my God, this guy just made a bunch of money on these digital coins. What is it? So I got into Bitcoin around like 800 to $1,000. Ethereum was like $17. Ripple was around, but Ant shares converted into Neo, and that was a really big project that I had come up on. I only had a little bit of money. I invested like $1,500, maybe $2,000 into the whole deal. And literally within like 4 months, that transformed into like $250,000. And I was like, what the heck did I just do? I'm like 19 years old. I'm in college. I was like, I gotta share this with people. So I just created books and courses and all that kind of stuff. I was giving it out for free, was speaking on stages on it. And then that's how I really got into cryptocurrency.
Was that your first big financial break, would you say?
Oh, for sure. Before then, dude, I was doing e-com, I was doing marketing agency, but my market was very blue collar-esque. Like entrepreneurship was not around in the sense of digital. For me, I was like a scrawnier kid, just knew and loved tech. Like it just clicked and I went down the rabbit hole. Within 3 months, knew a lot. So when I was like explaining it to people and sharing it, like there was just an innate draw to me because I had this info. And that wasn't necessarily an ego thing, but it was like, dude, I'm finally like helping people. Like is this what entrepreneurship is? Like being able to help someone learn something or teach someone something.
What would you say has been the worst financial decision you've ever made?
I've made many, man. I've made many. I'm not perfect, but this is where I really found out who was committed to the business and who wasn't, and whether the business was gonna last. I had actually taken out, because we had a lot of holds with payment processors and all this kind of stuff, essentially like an implosion on payment processing that 1 month. I had taken out like a flash loan essentially for that payroll coverage. It wasn't that that was the wrong decision. It was the decision that I had done that and no one else in that same company vouched for it or wanted to pitch into it. I was like, that's messed up, because I'm taking out the loan to help you guys out when I'm trying to push the company. I'm actually just paying your payrolls. I just took a loan out to pay you guys. That's not the right thing to do. Financially, it didn't make sense once things unraveled. Able to pay it off. That wasn't really a problem. It was paid off in like a month or whatever, but they really exposed a lot of partnerships in business. You should never want to take out loans or to do certain things like that. It was just a one-time occurrence, but that was probably the worst financial decision that I made, but it actually exposed a lot more and who was real.
Showed people who was really invested into it and who wasn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that be the way you find out. it was not necessarily the most efficient way to really weed out who's your friend or who's not, or who's actually committed or who's not, but it happens, part of entrepreneurship.
What would you say is the best financial decision you've ever made?
So after I had made the money in crypto, I had actually invested the rest of it into courses. So I'm a big believer in education, and like you can never really go bankrupt on yourself, because if you give up, that's how you go bankrupt on it, right? I invested like 30 to 40 grand into courses. I learned stocks, I learned e-com, I learned marketing. So I became a little bit more versatile understanding subjects. I didn't become an expert in every single one. I don't think that's actually viable. I think you should stick to one thing primarily, but then maybe 2 to 3 things that you are very passionate about outside of that. But for me, at least, it was invest into myself. That was probably the biggest lump sum investment I had made. And that was really just kind of discovering what I wanted to do. Flash forward, as the business started gaining more and more traction, because I had better skill sets and our team was making more money and stuff, I then invested into other mentorship. And I've never had an ego around not knowing something. In fact, I've probably invested a lot more into just trying to find the answer than just to go through self-discovery to figure it out, because I'm trying to condense time. And I think that's also a personal thing for me. I'll bet on myself because I know the skill sets in every single mastermind or every single program I've joined has had a return. It just clicks at a different point. And so it's that exponential effect where maybe the last mastermind you joined was the catalyst for you to go from $1 million to 7 million in revenues, but it was all the things that you did before, but that was the catalyst because that was the last link or that was the last connection that you needed, or whatever the case is.
What has been the greatest lesson you've learned so far?
Relationships really matter, but the right relationships matter the most. You can, be friends to many, but who are you gonna call in the situation where you only have 3 numbers to dial? Like if it was life or death, you had 3 numbers to dial, who's gonna be there for you? I think that matters the most, dude. It's like those core relationships, they take investment in time, money, helping them get to where they want to go. It's not just all about you. I think investing into your health is key. I've gone the full burnout way where you're working 16 hours a day. I actually had a really crazy health scenario that had happened when I was doing full-time work and school at the time. It was like 4 a.m. to midnight, and then I had the next day where I pulled in an overnighter for a government project. We were putting a bid on a building in Pasadena, and then I went back to school and then went back to work. I didn't sleep that 24, 48 hours, so it was like pretty brutal. And that night I had gone home, passed out apparently, and I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and all my books, everything was falling off, like the shelves and everything. My mom came in and she was like, what the hell is going on? I didn't know what was going on. So like health is very, very serious. I was stressed out to the max at the time. I even had a girlfriend at the time, so like I had no time for anything, and I've really learned to focus on health and like go push yourself.
What would you say is your long-term goal for yourself, and what motivates you to keep going?
Let's start with the why first, because it doesn't matter what I want to do if I don't have a driving force to get there. I came from a spot in which, my mom was making 30, 40 grand a year and living in the suburb of Los Angeles. Didn't have food a lot of the times. Just grew up always having a thirst for entrepreneurship and was literally hungry at points. And I was like, I don't want to ever do that for my family. Like, we're going to be successful. We're going to, have an abundance of food, have an abundance of all this stuff. Not in a gluttonous way, but just you'll never have lack of like basic needs.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. But your why evolves as you change, because like I can eat. I just had a chef come over yesterday. She made all my stuff because I hate cooking. The why isn't food anymore. The why is to sustain and become a different version of myself that I know that I can become. And so chasing potential, your human potential of impact, your human potential of changing an industry or the way that things are done, your impact and even how you show up, how your presence is actually felt, I think is also another thing a lot of people don't talk about. Like, how do you want to be able to walk this earth? Are you going to be, moping around, not being, the guy or the guy that can protect or provide? Like, I think for me, especially over the past 6 months, I want to be multifaceted and not just be the business guy. If I can lift more, if I can go, do self-defense martial arts, or if I can go do XYZ, then why would I not, right? So that's one, is chasing that potential and diversifying identity. But then the distinct why of like, but for me, it's for my mom, for my family. And then there's the outward facing, where like, I know I can impact people. By doing that impact, I know that I can take care of my mom. She's 66 years old or 65 years old. She retires in a year. She needed a little bit of help, sent her some money, and she was good. And that, to me, is like me accomplishing that fulfilling prophecy where they invested into me a lot. When they had nothing, I can at least give her, a couple $1,000 or whatever it was to help her.
That's goals right there, man. That wraps up episode 6 of 10 Questions with a Millionaire. Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate you filming with us today. Where can people find more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, sure thing. They can find me on Instagram. Appreciate you having me at the Robert J. Miller, the one and only. So the Robert J. Miller on Instagram. Just hit me there and I'll get back to you.